We'd like to thank Mainspring Companies for sponsoring Season 1 of The Next Entrepreneur. Mainspring celebrates the entrepreneurial journey, and we are very grateful for their support.
We did a lot of fine dining.
Right.
Pignetti did a lot of fine dining. And so he had this saying, he always wanted to do something casual. He said, you feed the kings, you eat with the masses. You feed the masses, you eat with the kings. That was his little saying. But even though he was in the fine dining business, so that always kind of stuck.
Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today with our producer, Mr. Daniel Sagona with Propel Productions, and our guest today is Mr. Ozzie Fernandez, founder and CEO of Go Eat Concepts. Ozzie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, Andrew.
So let's talk about what Go Eat Concepts is, and tell us about your restaurants.
Sure, Andrew. Go Eat Concepts is our family of restaurants. We're a hospitality brand with currently 4 brands or 4 concepts under our umbrella, plus a commissary kitchen. Started here in Baton Rouge in 2001 with our first concept, Izzo's, the legal burrito.
Okay, so tell us about each of your concepts, what it is about them is defining, and then tell us how many stores you have in each concept.
Sure. Izzo's is our first store, our first concept that we opened in 2001, right by the south gates of LSU. It's a fast casual Mexican eatery or burrito concept. We have more items than just burritos. And we currently operate 13 stores here in Louisiana. And we got one slated to open here in a couple of weeks in Jubin Square.
Okay.
And then we have Lit Pizza, which is our fast casual kind of build your own pizza. We call it craft your own. And we opened in 2016, again, right by the south gates of LSU. Feel like it's a great area for us. It was successful in the beginning, and
right.
So let's test it again here.
And you have how many of those?
Currently have 9 open. We've got 3 that are under construction and more slated to open after that.
Wonderful. And then you've got 2 other concepts, right?
Sure. It's our casual dining concepts, Rocca Pizzeria. It's a Neapolitan-style pizzeria located in Mid-City. Opened that in January of 2018. It's great full beverage program. So casual meaning you have servers. It's not fast casual like our other 2 concepts.
Right.
And been very successful with that one as well. And then we have Modesto. Our latest one is Modesto Tacos, Tequila, and Whiskey. And this one was a little project that I've been working on for quite some time. It's a little near and dear being of Mexican descent and my family being from Mexico. So we been working on that one there. And again, it's full service, got a great bar program, of course, margaritas and some regional tacos from Mexico, a little bit more. We call it Más Mex, less tax. So a little bit more authentic.
Yeah, very nice. And then you have your commissary.
Yes. Central Kitchen. It's kind of our hub where we produce some things for, a lot of things for our restaurants, and also, use our scale economy to purchasing power, if you will, to help offset some of the cost and keep our menu pricing as competitive for our guests as possible.
So you have 24 restaurants, 1 commissary, and they're all in Louisiana.
Yes, sir.
Right? And you mentioned, you have 4 in development, meaning they're happening.
They're slated to open. Yeah. Central is opening in the first week in April, and then that's Lit Pizza in Central, right off of Sullivan. And then we have another Lit Pizza opening on Jubin Road, Jubin Square Crossing, along with an Izzo simultaneously towards the end of April.
So, Ozzie, are all these corporate owned? I mean,
correct.
No franchises.
We have 1 franchise store in Lake Charles. It's an Izzo's.
Okay. And is there more franchising planned for the future?
No, we're going to do corporate owned.
Corporate owned. Okay. So, look, you're a serial entrepreneur, right? Quintessential serial entrepreneur. Were you entrepreneurial as a kid?
I don't know if I was or not, to tell you the truth. I mean, I think I was, I didn't Probably a little bit. I would think so. I always had a job. My father told me if I wasn't going to play sports in high school that I needed a job. So I quit playing baseball. And the next day he told me I had a job at the local hardware store, which was great for me. I learned so much in hardware. My father was very hands-on with his hands. And so that taught me a lot. It actually helped me in the restaurants, whether it's electrical, plumbing, or whatnot.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like I had a good work ethic and I had a lot of ideas. And I think that came a little further down the road, though.
Now, where did you grow up?
In Houston, right outside of Houston, Sugar Land, Texas.
Oh, yeah. And college years were spent?
So I went to Texas A&M, graduated there in 1997.
97. And you followed college at some point with culinary school, right?
Correct. Yeah. In college, I had dreams, or in the beginning prior to go to medical school. So I started off chemical engineering, switched to chemistry to go to medical school, and then ended up with a degree in biology and a minor in chemistry. But med school towards the end of my college career just was something I didn't want to do anymore. And I had a passion for the restaurant industry. I'd worked kind of in restaurants. I had a good friend there at A&M that his family was in the restaurant business. And then, of course, my mother and just how much of a great cook she is, Mexican cook in the kitchen. We always spent our time entertaining people and in the kitchen, and just had a real passion for cooking.
Oh, so grandma got you started.
Well, grandma and my mother. So,
and your mother?
Yeah, I graduated, and my parents were they were like, well, do you want to go to culinary school now? You spent 5 years at A&M, and now you want to go somewhere else. So I did work in the chemical business. I worked for a fragrance oil company. We did fragrance oils for like botanical candles and so forth. I always came home smelling like candles. I have a real strong scent. So that didn't last too long. And then I started working and managing for some local restaurants, and really met a chef, an Italian chef that I trained under. And then I started going to culinary school at the Art Institute of Houston.
Now, did he kind of talk you into that?
Kind of talked me out of it, to tell you the truth.
Really?
Yeah. Because, it's at that point in time, I was already had my college degree, and
right.
You were learning more on the job training. Right. So it was very expensive as well. And he was doing a lot of consulting back in the late 90s there in Houston after the .com and the oil boom. A lot of people were opening restaurants. So they would hire him to design the menu.
All right.
We'd work with the architect on the kitchen layout. All the smallwares packages, all the whole menu design. And since I speak Spanish, I was a lot of our workforce was Spanish speaking in the kitchen. So it was he didn't speak any Spanish. So it was a good relationship where I learned a lot of good things and what things not to do that helped me out later on as I opened up my own restaurant.
So when you went to culinary school, was the original intent to go into business for yourself, or were you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had applied to the CIA, which is the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. And that was kind of in that late 90s when Emerald was really his show, and was inspiring. And there were some other chefs that were very inspiring. So I kind of had dreams and aspirations of running my own restaurant at that time. And, culinary school seemed like a good approach. And so I did learn some good things. Definitely, all the mother sauces and some basics and, in culinary world, but mainly on the job training.
So Ozzie, walk us through, you're out of culinary school. What did the next steps look like for you?
So I was doing consulting.
Working with the chef guy?
Sure.
The Italian chef?
Fignetti. Mm-hmm. And, learning a lot, obviously, opening concepts. And at the same time, working on my business plan. And I was trying to think of, we did a lot of fine dining.
Right.
Fignetti did a lot of fine dining. And so he had this saying, he always wanted to do something casual. He said, you feed the kings, you eat with the masses. You feed the masses, you eat with the kings. That was his little saying. But even though he was in the fine dining business, so that always kind of stuck with me. But, being of Mexican descent, the Mexican, really Tex-Mex is what Izzo's, ultimately is, a little northern style Mexican food into Texas. And the burrito craze was happening out west. And I kind of noticed that and said, this is something low cost, low startup. But, I didn't want to open in Houston. It felt like kind of open a po' boy shop in New Orleans. It's saturated. There's a lot of Mexican places, and I had a good friend of mine, Wes Davis, that played baseball for LSU, and he was back in Houston after LSU, and my wife's best friend went to LSU, and we were talking. They were like, "You got to look at Baton Rouge. It's a great market." And one thing Wes missed about Houston or Texas was Mexican food.
I got you.
He played baseball here, so I drove over to Baton Rouge and looked for a spot and found the spot right by LSU. And Mark Airbear, who I still talk to all the time, and we did our first deal together there with Mark and opened up.
And so, so it's Izzo's. How did you come up with the name?
So my brother and a good friend just started calling me Izzo. It's Ozzie backwards, It's just a name that stuck. I thought it sounded better than Ozzie's Burrito, so.
And, okay, so when you started that, did you have a partner?
I did. Yeah, Gary Kovacs. And Gary and I, he was like almost like a second father to me. We had a great relationship, great partnership. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2018. But I tell people we never had an argument. It was an unbelievable partnership.
Now, was he like a money man?
He was. Yeah. He was. And he believed in me, which was a great thing. And I actually met him through the restaurant industry there in Houston. He was an investor in one of the restaurants that we opened up.
Oh, really?
And I presented him, pitched him the deck with the business plan, and him and his wife, they loved it. And they said, we want to do it.
So did that deck, was the original intent multiple locations?
Yes. Multiple SEC schools, but so LSU being the first.
I see. So you were going to follow the SEC.
Correct.
And build out this brand. Early on, was there, I'm sure you just had your hands filled with that initial concept, but in the back of your mind, were you ever thinking multiple concepts, or not at that point?
Probably not. No, not at that time.
Okay. So what's the inspiration behind the name?
Well, Izzo's being Ozzie backwards, and then the illegal burrito being the size. There's a regular misdemeanor, there's a super felony. It was just kind of a fun play on words, and we had a marketing team that kind of helped us put some of that together, and they enjoyed it. I think we kind of pitched it to people, and they enjoyed it.
So you came from the experience of how to roll out concepts, working for that restaurant consultancy,
Correct.
Right? And a big part of that is branding and marketing.
Huge part.
And so you hired someone initially to create that logo and that brand
Correct.
for you, right? You had
Correct.
the name and that's fascinating. So I was just kind of curious if that was something maybe you started with, the initial logo, but has that changed over the years?
No, that's the original logo.
Wow.
I mean, I definitely had an input in kind of what, I think we went through a discovery phase with the marketing group, and then they were kind of took it from there. So they did a great job.
Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting, when you start a business and you're going into a retail strip center, which is, I think your first location was, right?
Sure.
And you have to sign a lease, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's a multi-year lease. There's a commitment there, but you're also in the restaurant business. And to build that out, there's considerable expense there with the kitchen and the exhaust systems and the plumbing and finishing out.
Certainly is.
So you've got this investment, and then you got this commitment. How long was your first lease?
5 years.
5 years. I mean, if it doesn't work, you still have to pay that lease, right?
Sure.
So how daunting was that for you on your first location?
I think that's where the partnership came in play. I was pretty young. I was 26 years old, so I was gung-ho and ready to open, and Gary was an investment banker, so he had, we had a great team, right? He had a lot of the financial, insurance, and legal, and we had all that in place on that side, and I learned a lot about that. I'd learned a lot about that in consulting, but I was more focused on the operational side of things. So, I was just determined not to fail. So a lot of that just didn't come into play. It was just like, when are we going to open the second one?
Yeah. So what did the first year or two look like for your business? I mean, how did it take off? And
well received. The community has been great. love Baton Rouge, wouldn't move here for any reasons. It's been great to us. My wife came from Houston as well, and you couldn't get her to move from Baton Rouge. We've got a lot of great friends here, but yeah, it took off pretty immediately. So
wow.
It was a very successful venture for us in the beginning, and it kept growing.
So how many hours were you working back then? I mean, what did your average week look like?
About 100.
100 hours.
Yeah, at least. It was wake up, close, wake up, close.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
A lot of energy.
A lot of energy. There were a lot of hard times, and I relied on my mom, who was an entrepreneur, and several salons there in Houston. And there were times that I called her and said, because I was in it kind of by myself. My partner was still in Houston. So,
right.
To go from concept to realization to open, it's quite a feat. And it was a lot they were, having to train everyone. Now I have teams of people that are experienced and, kind of know what they're doing per se. Whereas the first one you just didn't.
Yeah. So success in business comes from igniting passion, right? So passion for quality, culture, service, and that's what makes a customer want to come back to your store.
I would agree with that.
Right? But if I go and get an average meal, there's a chance I may not be coming back to that restaurant, right? So did you live that passion, that building that culture and demanding quality, on the food and all aspects of your business from day one? I mean, was that like clear to you, or was it a gradual build, a gradual process?
Well, definitely had a mission statement of providing a full dining experience, and we still talk about that today. What does that mean? A full dining experience. It's a great quality product, generous portions, friendly service. At a great value with clean, family fun atmosphere. I mean, those are the things that I focused on, was to do that, right? I mean, if you can have a great quality product and put it together with great service in a fun, clean atmosphere and a great value and generous portions, it tends to, the rest kind of falls in place. If you can manage those, sometimes you fall out, we fall short on one of those and we try to get it back on track. But that's kind of what we live by on all the concepts today.
So how many employees would have been in your first store once it was, humming?
I think I hired maybe 35 at the beginning, knowing that you were going to have some attrition there and, lose a few people and
right.
hire some people. Yeah.
But the average store would employ about that number?
About that.
Okay.
Sometimes a little less.
And so, I mean, you're going from, you were doing consulting work. Now you've not only got this restaurant, but you're employing 35 people. And I imagine there's some challenges.
Yeah, I know there definitely were. I mean, I was doing the payroll. I was doing all the bookkeeping. I had, Gary had a Copeland's in Kansas City. He was Neil Smith. I don't know if you remember Neil Smith from New Orleans. He played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Him and Neil were partners. They had opened a Copeland's in Kansas City. And so Gary had a controller there that was very knowledgeable. And so I flew up there to spend a week with her, just on the accounting side and using QuickBooks. Back then I used QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from her, which really transpired there. So the business aspect, that was a lot of time.
From day one, you were doing it all.
Doing it all.
So how long was it before you opened your second store?
So I think it was 2004. So 3 years.
3 years. And then what did the trajectory look like from there? Well, let me ask you this first. I mean, how much of a challenge was that to go from one store to two? I mean, was that stretching you at that point pretty good?
I think three.
Just time-wise?
Yeah, I think three is where it kind of starts to stretch you. Two wasn't bad, but if I'd had what I had in place today with the commissary kitchen and that, I think we could have grew a lot faster because we still do a lot of classical cooking at Izzo's. We just moved it off site, but we were, it's a lot of cooking from scratch, right. So each restaurant was challenging.
Yeah. So when did you feel like you were gaining some stability in Izzo's? I mean, it sounds like you had a really good start, a stable partner. Was there a point where you like thinking, okay, I think we got this?
Yeah, I think definitely when we opened Lafayette, which was my fourth store.
Okay.
Well received in Lafayette as well, which is a tough market to break into, and so is Baton Rouge. I felt like things were moving, but still we needed we needed to be able to scale it. And cooking at each store inside, which we still do today, but again, the commissary kitchens provided just the consistency and stability that we need, and also the powering and the scale of economies to keep. We have not raised our prices at Izzo's in 5 years.
Wow,
which is quite remarkable.
Yeah,
so we want to, for me, I need to do my work on my end for my guests to provide the best quality product at the best price, and that means being innovative and using our purchasing power to pass those savings on.
Very good. Okay, Ozzie, let's take a quick break there, get in a word from our sponsor, and we will be right back. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. Okay, and we are back with Ozzie Fernandez with Go Eat Concepts. So, Ozzie, you've opened your fourth Izzo's by this point in the story, right?
Correct.
I was just curious, like, how your restaurant support team, your back office, when did it start to build out, and what impact that had on your business, your ability to grow?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Actually, my first employee was my wife, which, Leslie, my wife, had great experience in payroll. She worked for ADP, and so she came on board and she started doing the books and the payroll, helping me out. But eventually we were seeing a lot of each other and decided that it's probably best that we don't work with each other. But, it's always fun working with your spouse. But we certainly had great times doing that, and she was a big help for that. She had a real knack for that, and also operations. She had some restaurant experience as well. So, but I don't think we started developing that until like 2007, 8,
So how many stores would you have had open now?
We would have had probably 5, that's 6, somewhere in there. So shortly after.
So you're running pretty hard at that point,
correct?
Right?
Yeah.
And she's helping you with the payroll and operations stuff. But
Sure.
it was pretty much a husband-wife team at that point?
Correct.
Until you started to build out, right? I mean, how many people do you have helping you with 24 restaurants right now?
Yeah, we have several, executive team, and then we have above store team. So, it's double digits for sure. So, but we started, first person was to bring on kind of a controller, someone that would take over the bookkeeping and, look at the financials. We were always, big on staying on top of that. That was something that we did do. We didn't try not to work from the dark, we wanted to be in front of things, not behind things. So we still take obviously that approach today, but we started building those teams and started slowly getting, payroll people in, HR people in, and, really above store management too, to help kind of run the restaurants, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
So you're incurring overhead costs, right, to help you, but obviously that's going to accelerate your growth.
Correct.
And more than pay for itself. So
certainly.
I was curious about how your advertising and your marketing has changed over the years from when you began to what what you're doing now? What does that change look like?
Sure. I mean, in the beginning we were doing a lot of print, newspaper, local magazines. Obviously, social media has changed the advertising game. We've done billboards, we've done some TV, radio, which are great traditional mediums, but social media has really changed. From several perspectives. I think at least is that our guests, they want to interact with the brand, and I think that's very important. They want to hear from you, but you also got to listen. That's something that we really try to do is listen to our guests and what's going on, not only from an experience standpoint, but just from a cultural standpoint and from a product standpoint, and try to engage with them on a daily basis. And I think we've a marketing director now, Rachel. She does a great job with our social media and kind of engaging people and keeping people, whether it's giveaways or rewards programs or something of that nature. But organic is a word we like to use. Word of mouth is always the best advertising in my book. But so we want to provide that extra experience that when you leave there, you're wowed and you say, wow, because, we love to entertain here in South Louisiana. I mean, that's what we do. We eat and we entertain, and we certainly like to talk about restaurants. And so you want to make sure that you're in that conversation in a positive way.
And it's interesting how word of mouth looks today, because someone can check in when they go to your restaurant and,
certainly opens up a floodgate, right? It could be positive. It could be, something.
But even if they're not making a comment, you just see that the fact that they checked in somewhere, it's like,
correct.
It's fascinating advertising.
But you can, to be able to push out an LTO or some sort of, promotional or drink special or live music in the click of a few buttons is pretty powerful for social media. I don't personally, don't use it a whole lot other than business aspect, but it's very powerful.
Okay. I want to ask this question about what do you recall as being some of your biggest challenges that you remember from growing Izzo's to the size it is today?
I think it's definitely the challenge was the people aspect, right? I mean, just HR and putting people in place to succeed, wanting to create that culture, that passion. We found a lot of people with passion. We've been very fortunate that sharing those goals that are genuinely care. But that's always, believing in people. And that starts at the top. I mean, it starts with me. You got to be able to make sure that, we put the culture in place and the ethics and, everything, that we hold in high regard and live by it, not just put it on a piece of paper. And so that aspect was, the execution of the business model from that perspective, from a guest perspective, I think is the most challenging thing is that, because the product we could execute, but the service model is where we tend to fall short sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's in the human interaction, the human side of things. I've always told people, we go into restaurants to kind of forget about our problems, right? We all have our own problems. We certainly don't need someone else putting theirs on our, when we're looking to spend our hard-earned money. So it's important that, we're friendly, we're courteous and professional, and we're here to do a job. And being in the hospitality business, you have to be a people person. I tell people if you acknowledge me within 45 seconds, I'll wait 15 minutes. But if if it starts teetering on a minute or longer and you don't acknowledge me, you start to get a little patient. So, just small details of what separates, I've always been a detail-oriented person in terms of service.
Yeah. And I imagine that the general public is more demanding than they were even, 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, we do open kitchens. That's something I believe in, is really have an open kitchen. That's something that the chef that I trained under, we did a lot of. And you can put on a show. I tell people, let's put on a show. It's great. You can see and you can interact with your guests, and that's what we don't call them customers, we call them guests. Right? So you're opening up your home to guests, and it's something that we do. You can interact with them through the kitchen, which is a beautiful thing. And you can't hide.
Right.
You know what's there. You got to keep it clean. You got to keep it fresh and keep it moving. And so it's something we take a lot of pride in, is making sure that we're.
Yeah, you can feel it in your restaurants.
Thank you.
You can sense that your employees are they really care about what they do, and they care about delivering quality.
Well, I think that's the key, Andrew. Is something that I was not going to bend on certain ingredients or certain items or all of them. Whether it's guacamole. We're never going to use a pasteurized pulp process. We're going to use 100% Haas, California, or Mexican avocados. When I opened in 2001, the corn, my local corn provider didn't have fresh corn. I said, "You got to be kidding me." He goes, "No, we use frozen corn. Everybody uses frozen corn." I said, "Well, I can't use frozen corn." And so they brought it in special for me. And now I'm sure they sell it. I bring it in by the pallets because we have our own produce program through the Commissary.
Right.
So we've never bent on this, even though corn might spike to some, our salsa. We make it no canned products. Our salsa is 100% fresh tomato, fresh jalapenos. So there's certain things, and I think that translates over to the employees to where they know they're proud to serve that product and they know what goes into it.
Yeah.
It creates a culture of,
and
proud to serve it.
And I think the culture is, you can see it in your employees. They seem like they're happy to be at work,
It's what we strive for. We certainly do.
Well, it's working. But, okay, so how long was it along your journey before you identified like you were ready for another concept? Because Izzo's was continuing to grow.
Correct.
Right? And still is. So what made you go, hey, let's do something on top of that?
Yeah, I think it was, sometime in 2010, I was going to California. Our lettuce farmers out there actually brought us over there 3 years in a row. We were one of the bigger accounts in Louisiana. So we would fly to San Jose and go to Salinas, and I would take a manager with me. We'd go out to the fields to the harvesting, and we learned what it took to get a head of lettuce from conceptual, from seed to your plate. All the transportation, and it's quite remarkable. You learn unbelievable hard work that our farmers do, and we take it for granted. We just go buy a head of lettuce. We don't really know what's involved in that. And so having gone out west and kind of, spent some time and, training under an Italian chef, pizza, we did a lot of pizza. So Italian food is kind of my second love. I learned a lot training under him from an Italian standpoint. So I thought, we're already doing this fast casual for burritos. It makes sense to do it for pizza. And there were other prior concepts out there that were having success, and said, we can do this, So we kind of put the pitch deck together, put the business plan together, and started executing it. And then that was born. To me, we had success opening by LSU. LSU's got long tentacles. It's a great university, and you get people. I remember when we opened Izzo's, you get people from all around the state, actually people out of state as well, that would come, and they would say, I saw Izzo's charge on my daughter's, debit card. I had to see what this place was about. And so, people would bring them there, and you got to open one in Lafayette. We had a lot of fans kind of throughout the state. So I said, what better place than do it by LSU? College students, same recipe for success that we did with Izzo's. It made sense to me. So
it was one of those things. You saw a similar concept out west, and you go, hey, I can do this, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, let's roll.
Let's roll.
So how did Lit Pizza take off for you?
Great. Lit's been Lit's from an operational standpoint, or, is, I would say, from a restaurateur, an operations person, it's, I won't say simpler, but it's a little easier, especially with the Commissary. The dough production and assembling a pizza versus all the cooking that we're doing at Izzo's they're two different, operational things. But it's been wildly, been very humbled by it, from the get-go. A lot of raving fans and, a lot of support from the community.
So other than the fact that it's different in what you just mentioned about how there's maybe less involved cooking, how was it as far as scaling and your ability to scale versus, so you have 9 lits right now.
Correct.
Soon to be 10. Soon to be, 12?
12.
How much easier was it to scale those first 9 versus your first 9 Izzos?
100% easier. Yeah. That definitely with the team in place.
Right.
The commissary kitchen in place.
Right.
And, really management in place.
Yeah.
So
that efficiency is, there's a lot of cost savings there. You look back at your human capital and for your business, inventing that wheel the first time to then be able to take advantage out of your second concept. That's
no, you're absolutely right, Adrian.
That's a big difference.
Big difference.
That's huge. So I wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about, when I'm looking at all these restaurants that you have, I'm thinking of managers.
Sure.
And, so tell us about how you got to the point where you could develop and train enough managers that you could feel comfortable that they're going to run the place for you, because you can only be in one place at a time, right?
Well, I think that took me a little while in the beginning was to let go, right? I think my partner, Gary, was always like, look, if we're going to grow, you've got to get out the restaurant at some point and, do other things to help us grow, trust. And, not that I didn't trust people, but you wanted everything perfect, But now, we have so many great people working for us in the training program and really developing within. I've always believed in a deep bench. I tell my management team, in order for us to grow, you've always got to be looking to replace yourself. And what does that mean? You've got to be training the next you. So when I come calling, you're ready for the next opportunity, or someone else is, impacting people's lives through promotion, through career growing is something that I take, it's really near and dear to me, because I've seen the impact that it had on my employees' lives. People have, started off as rollers, what we call them line staff at Izzo's, and have grown into, an area manager that, purchased their home and, has a family, and, and it's a beautiful thing for me to see people grow that way. And so developing people and developing new positions and opportunities is something that we take very importantly. And so, that's something near and dear to what we do every day.
Yeah, that's interesting, because in order for one of your employees to train someone, in essence, to replace them, they have to have the confidence
Correct.
that you got it going on so that there's a next opportunity. But with the amount of restaurants that you're rolling out and the different concepts, that's not a hard concept to sell to them, right?
No, it's not.
They can look around and say, man, this guy's got it going on, right?
Yeah, some of them would give me a little strange look, but I said, why would I get, exactly. That's exactly the reason that you got to give them. But they understand it. They say, if you want to grow, and it's okay. Some people, or maybe, don't want to run 2 restaurants. They love running one restaurant, and certainly we identify those people. But developing people is something that we take a lot of pride in doing.
So, you've got different restaurants, different concepts, different identities and brands and feelings between the restaurants. So your restaurant support team, they got to be, wearing different hats throughout a day. I'm guessing. Is that how you work?
Yeah, we wear a lot of different hats. Okay. Yes.
So how difficult is that for your team to transition? Like they initially would have been all in on Izzo's.
Correct.
And now you're going, okay, guys, here's our next one. What does that look like? Is that challenging?
It's definitely challenging. The HR component is probably the most challenging part, just because we have a lot of employees, and, our financial officer, Conrad, does an exceptional job. He kind of crosses over into some operations. He's very, very good with the numbers and keeping us in line there, and then pushing those budgets out to our staff and our team and making sure that everybody's on target. And, we do a lot of that to help our staff. We do a lot of profit sharing within the restaurant for our management team to kind of incentivize them, if you would, because I do believe in incentivizing. I think it's a way for people to buy into to what you're selling for sure. To be part of the team, to feel like their hard work is not only rewarding, but it can be financially rewarding to them as well. But we certainly wear a lot of hats. There's no question about it. I mean, you got to love this business to be in it. And, I tell people we work when others are having fun, those Friday nights, weekends, or holidays. And we're trying to change the restaurant kind of narrative of managers not having, quality of life is important. So, whether it's working 5 days a week and having a deep bench. Again, we talk about a deep bench. So if you go on vacation, your phone's not ringing, you've got a deep bench. And
that's got to mean a lot to managers, because historically that's been a tough gig.
It has been.
It can be life consuming.
It can be.
I was just curious if when you look at your different concepts and you think about culture, do you look at that as the culture's fairly uniform, or is there a different culture between your concepts?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit different culture between the concepts. I think there's more along the lines of the style, right? The sector that we're in. Fast casual has its own great culture. I mean, it's, but then the Roca has its own culture just because it's mid city there. It's one restaurant. It's got a lot of great, we've got a lot of great people. So it's slightly different per restaurant, but more along the sector lines, if you would.
So I've seen where you have locations where you have an Izzo's right next to a lit, like a two-store strip center, if you will.
Correct.
I was curious, what is the efficiencies of that work for you? I mean, is that really meaningful?
Very meaningful. Yeah, it's kind of what we're looking to do in the future. Build whether we go in the strip center or we go into a full standing restaurant, freestanding restaurant. But it's a great model. Our guests love it. We get a lot of compliments that half the families wanting Izzo's and the other half wanting lit, and we just kind of meet in the middle. So whether and I'm in the concept development. That's what I like to do. So we've got 4 brands, and I'm probably looking to open, another concept, and maybe that would tie into that if we're going in an area that maybe, we don't want to cannibalize ourselves. And so we would kind of maybe do another concept, whether it be something else, but not ready to disclose that quite yet. Yeah. But it works, and, we do keep them, they have a demising wall. They're completely separate kitchens. Yeah. So we don't really share any of that. I don't want to do any, it's better to keep it, but have a shared patio. Patio dining right now is hot. Obviously, I don't see that going away, even though it gets pretty warm here in the summers, right? But it's been a great model for us that we're certainly going to continue to look to do that model.
Very good. Okay, let's take a quick break there, Ozzie, and get a word in from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Modus for their support of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. Who is Modus? Modus is a facility services company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry across the United States. What do? They like to say they take it from the conveyor to the dock door. Well, what does that mean? It means that they're building the pick stations with the cable management. They're installing guardrails and bollards. They're putting down floor marking. They're putting up aerial signage. These guys build fencing systems, shelving systems, and racking systems. They also do rack recovery for when there's rack failures. They also install dock levelers and dock doors. Modus also installs ASRS systems, which is automated storage and retrieval systems, as well as other robotics projects. They've worked for the largest e-commerce retailers in the world, and they can work for you. If you need to find Modus, you can reach them online at modusmoves.com. And we are back with Ozzie Fernandez with Go Eat Concepts. So, Ozzie, you've got Lit and Izzo's rolling at this point. Do you see those two concepts kind of growing essentially at the same pace moving forward, or is it strictly, more about a function of market demand or saturation?
I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely growing both brands. I think Lit is probably growing, 3-1 over maybe a little bit more, just depending on the locations. Yeah, it's I think scaling it is like we talked about, the operational is just a little bit quote unquote easier, if you would. So and pizza is a universally loved product, right?
Yeah.
It casts a bigger net, than I think than all day Mexican food. It does cast a big net.
Hey, I had it for breakfast yesterday.
Exactly.
Right.
You can eat it for breakfast.
Okay, let's talk about the concept that followed Lit.
Yeah, Rocca Pizzeria.
Yeah. So why? Okay. Now, Rocca Pizzeria, describe that to us. That's a sit down.
It's a Neapolitan style pizzeria. Yeah, it's a local pizzeria, sit down, full service with a great wine cocktail program. So, that was born out of my travels. Going to major cities, including New Orleans, and always seeking out Neapolitan style pizza. And people say, "What is Neapolitan?" Well, it's from Naples, Italy. I mean, arguably the home of pizza, right? It's where pizza. In Naples, they use 00 flour. It's milled very fine, kind of a higher hydration. They use usually a natural starter, like a sourdough starter. And so they use wood ovens, high heat, usually 800 to 1,000, somewhere in there, depending on how they like it. That 00 flour can take that heat. And it produces kind of a leoparding, if you would, on the crust, on the corner cone. And it's a beautiful, it's some people say it's a knife and fork pizza. But I absolutely love it. And so when Jack, Counselor, called me, he owns that building right there on Mid-City. He called me to come look at it. It used to be Goutte restaurant.
All right.
And for an Izzo's, for a Lit, I walked in there, and it's a historical building. It's a beautiful building on the inside. And, I kind of looked around and I said, do not want to commercialize this product. I mean, this building.
Right.
It just didn't feel like it, not that I think Lit would have probably done okay there.
Right.
But it felt like it needed something. And Mid-City was growing, and it was, Government Street, we it's our comparison is, we want to compare it to magazine and that kind of lifestyle, and so I said, this is the perfect place to do the Neapolitan style pizza.
Now, did you already have that in the back of your mind? It's something you were already working on?
Correct.
And then the space
space became available.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I had kind of written a menu, and, Neapolitan was not, I could, was going to do a lot of research and travel and so forth. But then I met Alon Shaya from New Orleans. And so I actually, hired him as a consultant. And him and his team, Pomegranate Hospitality, came down, and we worked together on that menu. And really a lot, it was all him.
Oh, wow.
And very talented, extraordinarily talented. His whole team. I actually have a couple people now that are with me. Our culinary director, Chef Kara Peterson, and our director of hospitality, Sean Courtney, are with me. They helped open up Roca in the beginning, and they're a fantastic, executive team that's helping me with Roca and Modesto. But Roca was born, and it's got great, we call them antipasti, so the small plates.
Right.
Great beverage program, wine, like I said, and it's been well received.
Now, how is management of that concept, that one store, differ from?
It's more traditional. We got the back of the house and front of the house as where Izzo's and Lit, are just a single entity, if you would.
Right.
So there is some dynamics, a lot of service models and pre-shifting. And, of course, you got chefs in the kitchen, and, they're kind of in charge of that back of the house operations. And then getting the two, we've done a very good job of, traditionally you would see almost a wedge between the front of the house and the back of the house. And we don't have that, which I'm proud of. And that's kudos to the management team to work together, cross over into each.
Now, is that a concept where you would see multiple locations?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's probably slower growth, but find the right location. We'd like to open this, one of each. Modesto, we opened in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously that started pre-pandemic,
Right,
all the planning and That one again was born from more of a personal. The tacos are hot. They're going to continue to be hot. We're making our own fresh tortillas. We're trying to do things a little differently there and more. I think the public wants a little bit more quote unquote authentic. What that word means. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico in my younger years. Both of my parents are from Mexico, so it's personal to me in terms of making these a little bit more, Mas Mex, less Tex. Nothing wrong with Tex-Mex. I do it at Izzo's, love it. But certainly we want to, I tell people Mexico has a lot of regions and a lot of different types of cuisines, a lot of influences from world influence, French, German. Mexicans have great pastries. We owe that to the French. We have great beer. We owe that and sausage making. We owe that to the Germans. And so there's, of course, and you have the regional with the corn and just we use the al pastor, from Lebanon, with the pork. They replaced the chicken with the pork on the fire pit there. So it's a beautiful, great culinary scene in terms of Mexican food, and there's a vast world to explore there that I plan on doing more of it.
That must be exciting, not only the different concepts, but fast casual versus casual, and from the house back of house versus.
It's a different dynamic. And I got my start in full service fine dining. So I kind of remember we kind of ventured away from that to low startup, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, something that was scalable, but now the full service model is great.
So when you look at your restaurant support staff, at your headquarters, they're employees of Go Eat Concepts, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And then, so do you they're working on different concepts throughout the day from what I'm understanding. So are you kind of providing a management service and then charge back to the different brands?
Correct.
Is that how it works?
We have a management fee that each restaurant pays back to pay above store management.
Gotcha. So let's talk about your commissary. So you purchased the commissary division of Table Fresh Foods from Associated Grocers, right?
Correct.
And what were you trying to accomplish there, and how is it working? And what is the, what's a geographic reach of a commissary, right? I mean, do you get what does that all look like?
Yeah, so the commissary kitchen, we did purchase that. We were doing business with Table Fresh prior to me purchasing it.
Gotcha.
And so that kind of developed out of them wanting to exit and me wanting to enter. So it was a good timing for both of us on that aspect. So for we were mainly using them for lit side production of some sauces and so forth,
right?
And produce,
right?
And so as we look to expand lit and bringing in a $20,000 dough mixer to each restaurant, and the know-how and the recipes and the daily execution of that was, we were moving through, probably about 800 pizzas a day. So it was about 4 to 5 batches of dough a day.
Wow.
And, having to roll them and so forth. So it put a lot of strain on operations. It required a bigger footprint. And so looking at it, if we're going to expand, especially with Izzo's as well, the commissary kitchen made a lot of sense. And we got a great workforce there, great team. They take a lot of pride in what we do. We're still doing the exact same classical cooking, but just in larger batches. And we have, 3 refrigerated trucks that go out 6 days a week. And the restaurants place an order not only for items, but they, produce. We're 100% supply our own produce to our restaurants. And we purchase direct from California, Mexico, Florida. So, a lot of that cost savings is, again, passed on to our guests by not having to increase prices and so forth. So it's been in the consistency. I can't get to you. I mean, that, I compare it to gumbo. You and I could have a recipe for gumbo and, we're in 2 different kitchens and it'll probably be slightly different each time. And so, but, our guests expect consistency. And so that and the scale, the economies there, and the purchasing power to allow us to do that has been very, very big for our business.
And is that at the commissary? Is that where you also like test new?
Yeah, we do a lot of R&D. Yeah, we do our pizza of the month for Lit. We do all, we try not to change the menu. Lit and Izzo is pretty standard, but more of the R&D for Modesto and Roca are born out of inside the restaurants with the chefs, but we certainly use it for R&D.
Oh, very cool. So you recently got an investment from an investor, right? And tell us about how that's going to help you grow your business.
Yeah, that was on the Lit side of things.
Okay.
Local Gordon McKernan, great guy, and a little team of investors with him. Been very good, great partnership. And we're looking to expand Lit Pizza, go further. And for me, it provided some, obviously, some capital,
right?
Expansion to expand. And so it's been good. It's been a great partnership, and we look forward to keep expanding that.
So do you have numbers on what you're trying to grow that to? I mean, are they?
So we've got a roadmap that we're looking. I mean, we definitely want to kind of continue to follow I-10 back east and west, and try to develop those, in terms of management, not try to jump too far. I think we did a little bit of that with Izzo in the beginning. Too much windshield time can, right. You don't have enough above store management to make sure things are, the culture and the execution of the business plan are going as they should be. So we got a roadmap to continue to expand, and I try not to put a number on it, but we're developing.
It's really interesting when I hear you talk about your story. You can see the lessons learned, like throughout the years, which to me just read to be more and more efficient, which is what all businesses, strive for. But I can see where that would be really meaningful to what
we still have a lot of holes to fill. Real estate, I think, we something we're looking to bring on, construction management, that side of the equation. Real estate's important.
Right. Oh, yeah.
We've been piggybacking the success of or the studies of other major chains, but there's some dynamics and statistics that we need to look at to make sure we're going in the right,
now,
the right area.
On your locations that are in strip centers, I suspect you're leasing most of those, but where you have your freestanding concepts, are you owning any real estate there, or are you leasing?
We do own some real estate, where we can own, we will. And sometimes leasing, obviously in the shopping centers. So, but it's getting, it's tough. You have to bid, some other competitors and so forth, and
right.
Can drive the prices up a little bit. But we've been fortunate that we run, we think a pretty good operation, and we've been attracting some developers that are contacting us so we can get in early, if you would. But
good.
We're looking for dirt to build freestanding units, especially the 2 model, Izzo's and Lit, and maybe throw in another concept to get up to 5 concepts. We touched on that, so we're working on something, but we'll announce that probably sooner. But yeah, we want to continue to grow, just smart growth, not just open a restaurant to open a restaurant.
Okay, a couple of things wrapping up here. I was curious, looking back over your career, if there's any one thing that stands out to you where you go, oh man, I did a good job with that. Like that went well.
That's a great question. Like business sense, business component. I would probably have to say structuring, the partnership in the beginning, and obviously it progressed, but having those partnership agreements, buy-sell agreements, insurance in place, key man insurance for people, I don't know if people, even kind of estate planning, I don't think enough of us look forward, and kudos, a lot to my partner who was an investment banker, had an insurance background. So I think a lot of the legal structure of that came into place more so because of him. I was pretty young at the time at 26 and wasn't really thinking about those times. But I would tell people or give advice to make sure if you're going to go in partnership, because partnerships are, it's like a marriage. It takes work on both sides, and but you also need to have an understanding going into it, right? Whether you want to work with, if something happened to one of you, do you want to work with the other's family, or do you not want to work with them, and so forth. So
yeah, that's really fascinating, because at 26, you're not thinking exit strategy.
No,
right?
not at all.
You're not thinking key man insurance. But when you select a partner who is sophisticated, as you did, and he has the wisdom and the experience to realize, look, this is how you handle this type of situation, and then guide you to put that in place, key man insurance. So when you need it, it's there.
Correct.
What you're saying is that
it's good. It's good advice for people to make sure you structure your partnership agreements from the beginning. It may not, you don't want to spend the capital to, pay the attorneys to do it and do it right, but I would advise you to do it, and then it's the same thing with my new partner. It's great advisory, I think for me, not only the capital, and Gordon's a great guy. I mean, he's a pizza connoisseur, and he loved pizza. He loved what we were doing. And to me, it was the passion that sold me, on that, but also the advisory board, not just from that perspective, just in general. Sometimes being alone and making decisions, alone can be daunting. So having some sort of advisory board, where you can bounce ideas or bounce problems or issues off of each other, and kind of say, I've experienced that before, and I think that really helped me having that in place. So I would highly advise people to make sure that they lean on people, and especially if you're going to do partnerships, to have those agreements in place.
That's great advice. So last thing I have for you here is, what advice would you give to a young person who is thinking about going down that entrepreneurial path?
Sure.
Particularly if it's in your industry, food service. Yeah,
food service. Yeah, it's a competitive business, but it's worth it. You got to have the passion and desire. I mean, we talk about that. I think the restaurant industry is unique in that aspect that you got to live it. You really have to live it. And so it would go along the lines of, if that's your passion, your desire is to obviously believe in yourself and believe, hopefully find a niche in what you do. I think you got to study that side of things and making sure that your consumer base, your demographic that you're trying to cater to is going to be a repetitive customer, and come back. But establish those things in the beginning, the culture. What does it mean to you? If you're going to serve your product, to me, it was a beautiful thing to serve my product, especially my family's recipes, and entertain people and watch them smile. And I'm really focused on that versus some of the other stuff. And I figure that maybe that'll all work itself out if I figure out the operational side of things, what makes people return, right? And so my advice is to put a business plan together, put a roadmap, right? Write it down, give it to someone, let them look it over, let them ask you questions. You'd be a great person to ask questions. I wish I'd had that, but I think, having a roadmap of what you want to do, not just the small picture, but the big picture is probably the biggest advice. And really, what is that roadmap? It includes the financial side of things, the legal side of things, the banking, right? The insurance, the operations, the procurement, the marketing. There's so many facets of it. So put it all on paper, have a roadmap.
Yeah, great advice, man. Ozzie, look, it is an honor to have a serial entrepreneur like you on the show. I mean, what you've accomplished is amazing. To grow any one of your concepts to the degree that you have is extremely impressive, but to have 4 concepts and maybe a 5th and a commissary, it's really spectacular. And I'm grateful that you spent the time with us, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for those kind words. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, definitely a great time.
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Adrian.
The thing that I kept thinking about listening to Ozzie during our conversation was, it seemed that he just continued to make one smart move after another. And, he's an intelligent guy, went to a great college, knew that he wanted to open a restaurant, so he went to culinary school. And he was going to pick, something that he was familiar with from his family heritage. But he knew not to open another Mexican restaurant in Houston, which is flooded with it. So he goes to Baton Rouge, where there's less competition. He gets a great partner, very sophisticated, a man who knew to put key insurance policies in place to address an exit strategy. He developed his brand, and he got to a point where he built his commissary for quality control and to help reduce costs. And then as he's developed multiple brands, he's identified ones which, may have more demand than the other, and is addressing that. All just really brilliant moves. So it's been fascinating to watch Ozzie grow his business, and we look forward to his continued success. If you want to reach Ozzie, you can find him online at goeatconcepts.com. We thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Mainspring Companies. It can be reached online at mainspringcompanies.com. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at ask@nxtentrepreneur.com. You can subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can help support our podcasts by leaving a review on Apple Music. You can follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this episode with your family and friends. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. They can be reached at propelyourstory.com. Today's episode was produced by Daniel Sagona.